Hi and welcome. I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Russia-Ukraine peace talks conclude in Geneva without a breakthrough. Global leaders convene inaugural Board of Peace meeting to solidify Gaza's ceasefire and advance reconstruction plans. Tehran says talks with Washington in Geneva ended with agreement on guiding principles, though key differences remain. Thank you for tuning in. We begin in Geneva, where talks between Russia, Ukraine, and the US concluded without a breakthrough. The meetings ran late into Tuesday and lasted just 2 hours on Wednesday. U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff has expressed optimism, but both sides described the talks as difficult. Moscow and Kiev remain divided over territory and ceasefire terms, with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky accusing Russia of stalling negotiations that could already be concluded.
The talks lasted for 2 days. We had very long discussions yesterday in various formats. Today we talked about 2 hours. Talks were difficult but businesslike. A new meeting will take place soon. That is all we wanted to say.
Today we had another round of trilateral negotiations in the Ukraine-US-Russia format. The discussions were intensive and substantive. We thank our US partners for ensuring that the process is not stopping and continues, and Swiss side for hosting us. There is progress, but no details can be disclosed at this stage. The next step is to achieve the necessary level of consensus to submit the developed decisions for consideration by the presidents. Our task is to prepare a practical, not merely formal, foundation for this. Ukraine remains constructive. The ultimate objective is unchanged, a just and sustainable peace.
Turning to Britain, where unemployment has climbed to its highest level in over a decade outside the pandemic, as wage growth slows and inflation eases. The latest figures have strengthened expectations that the Bank of England could cut interest rates as soon as next month.
Britain's jobs market is starting to cool and it's beginning to affect people on the ground. Unemployment has risen to its highest level in more than a decade outside the pandemic, while inflation has fallen to around 3%. That's raised expectations that the Bank of England could cut interest rates as soon as next month. Businesses say hiring has slowed, especially since last year's rise in payroll taxes. The planned increase in the minimum wage and new worker protection rules are also causing concern. In retail and hospitality, for example, some cafes and shops are holding off on hiring new staff, relying instead on existing employees, work longer hours or temporary workers. Younger workers are feeling the squeeze. Analysts say companies are pulling back on entry-level roles in sectors like hospitality, retail, and office support. Migrant workers, who make up a large share of staff in care homes, construction, and food production, are also seeing fewer opportunities as companies try to cut costs. Overall, the labor market is cooling rather than collapsing. Wage pressures are easing, which may give the Bank of England room to cut rates, but for young workers and small businesses dealing with higher costs, it's already shaping up to be a tough start to the year. Jennifer Zade, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
As Britain struggles with unemployment, Canada has a plan to create more than 100,000 jobs. Prime Minister Mark Carney has outlined a strategy to raise the share of weapons Canada buys from domestic companies. He said it's aimed at reinforcing national sovereignty, not pushing the country towards isolation. Currently, Canada spends 70% of its weapons budget on U.S. products, a level Carney said is too high. Under the new defense plan, the government wants domestic firms to eventually make up 70% of procurement instead.
We have committed to double our defense expenditures by the end of this decade. And that amounts to an additional $80 billion over the next 5 years. To those ends, as the Minister mentioned, we are announcing Canada's first ever defence industrial strategy. It's a bold plan to get our armed forces what they need when they need it. It's a bold plan to scale Canadian defence companies and to put hundreds of billions of dollars into strategic sectors of our economy while creating over 125,000 high-paying jobs across Canada.
Over in the United States, global leaders are gathering for the inaugural Board of Peace meeting, seeking to turn a fragile Gaza ceasefire into lasting stability and reconstruction. With billions allegedly pledged and an international stabilization force planned, the new body could reshape regional peace efforts and potentially beyond.
The inaugural Board of Peace meeting is set to convene on Thursday, with more than $5 billion expected to be pledged for Gaza's reconstruction and humanitarian relief. President Donald Trump says member states will also commit thousands of personnel to a UN-authorized international stabilization force and local police in Gaza. The meeting will take place at the Donald J. Trump Institute of Peace and marks the board's first official session. Delegations from more than 20 countries, including several heads of state, are expected to attend. The Board of Peace was created as part of the Trump administration's 20-point plan to end the war between Israel and Hamas. It was formally endorsed by the United Nations Security Council in November 2025 with a 2-year mandate. The board includes 28 member states. Regional Middle East powers including Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Israel, as well as South Caucasus's Azerbaijan and Armenia, have joined the board. Global powers and traditional Western US allies have been more cautious. Canada, the United Kingdom, France and Germany have declined to participate. Italy has announced it will join as an observer, while the European Union is sending a commissioner in an observer capacity, but is not formally endorsing the initiative. An executive board has also been formed to oversee day-to-day operations and implementation. It is made up of selected member states and senior representatives appointed by the chair. President Trump serves as chairman of the Board of Peace and has the authority to appoint and remove members, including those on the executive board. Permanent membership requires a $1 billion entrance fee. The board's charter does not specifically mention Gaza, raising concerns among some governments that it could expand into other conflicts. President Trump has said the board could take on a broader global role and has criticized the United Nations for what he called its failure to deliver lasting peace.
With a massive American military buildup near Iran, Tehran and Washington have concluded another round of indirect nuclear talks in Geneva, leaving the channel open for further dialogue. With cautious signals from both sides, focus now shifts to when and how the next phase will unfold. Here's more.
Iran and the United States say they made cautious progress during a second round of nuclear talks held in Geneva on Tuesday. Speaking after the meeting, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said discussions were serious and more constructive than in the previous round. He said both sides reached an understanding on key guiding principles, but warned that more work is needed. Araghchi also stressed that progress does not mean a final deal is close.
According to these principles, and as a result of the good offices by our friendly countries in the region, which we are very grateful, a new window of opportunity has opened, under which we had the second round of the negotiations with the United States earlier today here in Geneva. We are hopeful that negotiation will lead to a sustainable and negotiated solution which can serve the interest of relevant parties and the broader region.
It's great to have you. And I do want to
US Vice President J.D. Vance also described the talks as positive in some ways, telling Fox News that President Donald Trump is seeking a solution. US officials said further discussions are needed on several details.
I think the president has a lot of options. We do have a very powerful military. The president's shown a willingness to use it. He also has a remarkable diplomatic team. He's shown a willingness to use that too. And so what the president has been very clear with the Iranians, and actually I just talked to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner this morning about some of their negotiations, is the United States has certain red lines. Our primary interest here is we don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. We don't want nuclear proliferation.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Esmail Baghei said Tehran has shared its positions on the nuclear issue, sanctions relief, and a framework for a possible agreement. A senior Iranian official told Reuters that progress depends on Washington avoiding what Tehran views as unrealistic demands and showing seriousness about lifting economic sanctions. Iran is expected to present more detailed proposals within 2 weeks. No date has been set for the next round of talks.
As the nuclear talks with the U.S. were underway in Geneva, Iran partially restricted traffic through the Strait of Hormuz during naval drills. A-News' Turaj Shiralilu sent us this report.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy shut partially the strategic Hormuz Strait connecting Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman. The move came during the second day of its war games on Tuesday, according to state media broadcasts. The drills, codenamed Smart Control of the Strait of Hormuz, in one of the world's most critical energy corridors, transiting a significant share of global oil exports, were staged on Monday ahead of the second round of renewed Iran-US mediated nuclear talks in Geneva. As Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards shut the critical strait for a few hours for what official media reported as a move to secure safety of passing vessels, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei strongly warned against U.S. military buildup in the region. Addressing a public meeting on Tuesday, he slammed U.S. military enforcement at its bases in the region, including dispatching of 2 aircraft carriers. Meantime, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that Iran's right to peaceful use of nuclear energy is non-negotiable, also warning that backlashes of an aggression will not be limited to Iran. He made the statement in a speech at the annual conference on disarmament in Geneva, hours after conclusion of the second round of renewed mediated nuclear negotiations with the United States. Prior to his speech at the UN's European headquarters, he termed as good progress his talks with US negotiators, also stating that productive discussions were held with IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi on eve of the Iran-US negotiations. Iran's Araghchi also said that no specific date has been set for the next round of negotiations. He added, it was agreed that both sides will work on the drafts of a potential agreement and then exchange these drafts. After that, we will determine a date for the third round of talks. Turaj Shiralilu, Tehran, for A-News.
Millions of Muslims are preparing to begin Ramadan, with the start date varying by new moon sightings. Across the Middle East, South and Southeast Asia, cities are illuminated and markets busy as communities prepare for a month of fasting, prayer, and reflection.
The crescent moon has been sighted across parts of the Muslim world, marking the beginning of Ramadan, a month of fasting, prayer and reflection for nearly 2 billion people. From Jerusalem's old city to the streets of Karachi and the markets of Jakarta, cities are glowing with lanterns and lights. Shop fronts shimmer with decorations, families stock their kitchens with dates and sweets, and mosques prepare for the first evening prayers. In the West Bank, a giant illuminated crescent was raised near Hebron in hopes of drawing families back together. In Yemen, workers repaint mosque domes and worshippers open their Qurans in quiet preparation. In Damascus and Baghdad, believers gathered to watch the sky as the new moon appeared. While some countries began fasting on Wednesday after confirming the moon's sighting, others will start a day later, reflecting the centuries-old tradition of observing the lunar calendar. Across continents, despite economic hardship and conflict in some regions, the arrival of Ramadan brings a familiar rhythm. Dawn meals before sunrise, long days of fasting, and nights filled with prayer, charity, and community. As lanterns flicker and the first Tarawih prayers begin, a month of spiritual renewal and shared devotion has quietly taken hold.
Now, after a short break, we'll take a look at Washington as it prepares to host the first Board of Peace Summit, examining the newly formed body, its participants, and its potential global impact. Don't go away. Welcome back. Now, as the U.S. Capitol is gearing up to host the first Board of Peace Summit to talk on the newly formed body, its participants, and potential impact on the global stage, we're joined by Richard Spooner, member of the advisory board at the Caspian Policy Center, coming to us from Washington. Welcome. Great to have you on the program. Let's start with the inaugural gathering itself. The U.S. president said earlier that a $5 billion pledge will be announced for Gaza. Based on what we've seen since the signing ceremony in Davos, what are your expectations of the meeting?
Well, I think, of course, what you mentioned is a very important initiative, and it's a good start. Obviously, the Board for Peace was originally created because the United Nations adopted a resolution that recognized a peace plan that the United States had proposed. At this point, the organization has, of course, I think, wide-ranging objectives. But specifically, tomorrow in Washington, I think they'll simply want to let the world know that this organization is moving forward, that it's going to have a voice, a loud, prominent voice in international relations, and live up to the importance that President Trump is attaching to it. So we'll see the specific results, but the fact that they're all coming together and the level of representation at the meeting, they all speak to the fact that the member countries are taking this organization created by Donald Trump very seriously indeed.
Well, as you've mentioned, this board came about with the Gaza Peace Plan. Another major part of that plan is the International Stabilization Force that's supposed to have boots on the ground in Gaza. We've heard reports that Pakistan wants assurances from the U.S. that the force will be a peacekeeping mission, not tasked with disarming Hamas before it commits to send troops. Do you think such details might be ironed out tomorrow?
Those sound like difficult details to iron out, and I'm not sure how much preliminary discussion about that issue has taken place. Of course, when it comes to peacemakers, a lot of us are prepared to volunteer military units from their armed forces to be peacekeepers. And so depending on which countries those peacekeepers come from, you might get an indication of the sort of general line that those peacekeepers will take on the ground. I can understand why some countries might be concerned if the peacekeepers are an American force. But I get the feeling that it's going to be different. We'll have to see exactly which countries' units make up that peace force.
Well, as we wait for those details, we do know who is on the board. More than 20 countries have signed on, with several global powers, including Western U.S. allies, being rather vague or outright declining. What are your thoughts on the makeup of the board?
Well, you're right. The makeup is not a list of U.S. traditional major allies. Far from it, in fact. I think that that's the point in Donald Trump creating this organization. He wants to create a new center of gravity where he is the undisputed chief. And days with the Board of Peace, but it seems like his goals, he's meeting his goals there. I think a lot of countries are agreeing to join this Board of Peace precisely because they realize it's important to President Trump, would like to be in step with the U.S. administration. Let's look specifically at, for instance, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan. Since last November, since the peacekeeping effort to end the war, well, to reach a peace treaty between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and since the Central Asian Summit in Washington on November 6th, It's been a moment where a lot more attention is being paid to Central Asia and to the South Caucasus. Azerbaijan obviously is benefiting from that, and Armenia is too. Presidents Tokayev of Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan have established a real rapport with President Trump. That's clear. So, not joining the Board of Peace would simply not make sense for these countries. As I said, they want to be in step with what the U.S. wants to do. They want to maintain this rapport that they've developed with President Trump.
And now, with all of these countries joining, there are some others who will be there, but in observer capacity. The EU's executive is sending Junior Commissioner Dubravka Šuica to attend. Some of the invited countries, including Italy, Greece, Japan, and South Korea, are also expected to be there as observers. What do you make of this cautious approach? We're not joining yet, but let's be there. Let's see what all of this is about.
Yeah, I think the cautious approach makes sense, especially because, if you will, the main powers in the EU are most definitely not going to be there. You know, Germany, France, the UK, but some other European countries will be there. And as you mentioned, an official from the EU will be there to monitor the situation. The thrust of the Board of Peace is to take influence away from the U.S.'s traditional allies, and I think ultimately away from the United Nations. That, of course, is going to be an issue of concern to a lot of countries, in particular those who are U.S.'s traditional allies. So this is the beginning of a high-stakes game. I think really wants to gain control over what international initiatives and programs he finances. Is he going to finance all of the UN's initiatives and programs right now? Or is he going to say, let's do this through the Board of Peace? And what kind of a situation will that create? Countries, different countries, middle powers, European powers, BRICS countries, how will they react to that? It's going to be very interesting to observe.
Yes, there are a lot of concerns with allies and rivals alike. As you've put it, Donald Trump's new center of gravity, some of those concerns are that this board might seek to replace the UN Security Council. Now, how can those fears and concerns affect the future of the board in its work and its efficiency?
Well, those fears might keep some coming near the Board of Peace, not join, and make it clear why they're not joining. But again, for other countries who consider it important right now to maintain a close relationship with Washington, maybe they haven't had an overly close Washington until recently, until the Trump administration, and maybe they're benefiting economically, you know, business-wise, from this closer relationship with Washington. So, you know, that's important. I don't think that, you know, countries like Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan away from the Board of Peace, because some people will express concerns about what this Board of Peace means for the UN Security Council. I think we're going to have to watch that play out. And the program for instance, the Board of Peace is talking about a $5 billion package to ensure peace in Gaza. Well, that'll be the first test to see how the Board of Peace performs, how the member countries react and participate, and then what the other countries who are not joining, what they say about it all.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us and providing us with your insight and analysis.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we are still on the talks that are supposed to be focused on next steps following the Gaza ceasefire and broader questions of stability. Our Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Orhan Amashov, is in Washington. Let's cross live now to him. Orhan, what's the mood in Washington and what are we expecting to see here?
Hello, Andy. Very good early afternoon to you from Washington, D.C. The meeting is scheduled to start tomorrow, of course. Well, there's a massive question regarding the remit, extent of responsibilities, and ultimately the status of this organization. As you know, it was originally conceived as an idea in its embryonic form back in September as part of President Donald Trump's Phase 2 20-point plan. It was a cornerstone of that very plan. And it was endorsed back in November by UN Security Council Resolution 2803 as an institution, as a body to aid Gaza reconstruction and governance. And also, it was authorized back then to deploy the stabilizing force, peacekeeping force in Gaza. But when the idea was actually properly launched and the institution was launched, with charter being signed on the 22nd of January in Davos, it emerged as a different organization with a wide range of responsibilities. Therefore, the question here is that what will be its exact remit? We naturally remember there have been a couple of instances in the history of international diplomacy and international law to create institutions with a specific mandate to address specific conflicts. East Timor, the body, we remember that Kosovo, UN administration in Kosovo is a very good example of that sort of arrangement. But this one, it looks very big. And the question here is that, will it eventually replace UN? Because currently it looks like what President Donald Trump said. It's going to be functioning in parallel with the UN institutions. But although its original mandate seems to be linked with UN, but because UN Security Council resolution is specifically about Gaza, this one looks at self-standing organization. It also alters entire geopolitical landscape involving an international legal order involving around UN Security Council, because basically UK is non-committal. It has refused to be part of it, but has not declined to be part of it. We remember the statement made by UN Security, UK Secretary of Foreign Affairs back in January. France and Germany categorically declined to be part of it. So it looks like US and some of US allies in the Middle East, and also like Azerbaijan and Armenia, are going to be part of this board. I imagine, Andy, tomorrow the focus will be specifically on $5 billion US, $5 billion play, plus, of course, naturally, stabilization force. So back to your original question, Andy, what is the mood? Mood is one of expectation, and the question is that whether UN will be replaced with this institution in the long run.
Orhan, thank you so much. You will keep us posted throughout the summit. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Now, after a short break, we'll take a look at the major stories from the region. Welcome back. Although formal empires ended decades ago, debates over power, inequality, and historical accountability continue to shape global discourse. Now, in Baku, a new digital initiative is seeking to document that legacy not only as history, but as an evolving conversation about influence and memory in the modern world.
For centuries, colonial empires extracted land, labor, and resources across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. While formal rule ended decades ago, many scholars argue that the legacy of colonialism can still be seen in wealth gaps, conflict, and the way global markets operate. In Baku, a new digital project is attempting to document exactly that.
I feel like I hear talk of decolonialization everywhere. The question is rather, are we talking about it in the right way? There are shortcomings that I think, once again, this type of tool can address. The first shortcoming is that we talk about it essentially in the past tense, in terms of reparations. As a result, we run the risk of always being behind in the decolonial struggle because we aren't addressing the new forms of colonization.
The Baku Initiative Group has launched what it calls the world's first virtual museum of colonialism, an online archive mapping both historical rule and what organizers describe as its modern forms. The platform brings together documents, photographs, and testimonies of people killed, deported, or persecuted under colonial systems. It also highlights resistance movements and liberation struggles.
So when we can create things like the Virtual Museum of Colonialism, first of all, it works as an archive to witness what has come before us. It also gives authorship and space for all the anti-colonial movements of resistance and liberation, and it also allows people who cannot travel, have restrained mobility, to be able to connect in this way and get a generative idea of what kind of conversations are happening right now, what has happened in the past, and what is the work and the planning to do in the future.
Available in English and French, the platform is designed as an open resource for scholars, students, and civil society, and as a space to debate what decolonization means today.
Baku also hosted the C6 conference, gathering experts to talk on strengthening regional ties, expanding trade and transport, and tackling security and economic challenges. Key talks centered on the Middle Corridor and Trans-Caspian routes, with an emphasis on turning strategic dialogue into practical projects across Central Asia and the Caspian region.
Azerbaijan is stepping into a new phase of regional cooperation as it joins Central Asia's consultative platform, expanding the format from C5 to C6. At a major conference in Baku, experts say this shift could strengthen strategic dialogue, boost connectivity through the Middle Corridor, and reshape economic and political ties across the wider Caspian region.
At the international conference, C6-1 region shared future, strengthening strategic dialogue. Participants focused on the Middle Corridor and Trans-Caspian routes, describing them as vital links connecting Asia and Europe.
Specifically, I would like to mention Middle Corridor connectivity, because I would say that's the backbone of the partnership with Central Asian countries, especially now in the context that the global powers like United States and European Union, they have interest in promoting connectivity across Central Asia.
Speakers highlighted that landlocked Central Asian countries rely on Azerbaijan's transport and energy infrastructure to reach global markets, reinforcing the country's role as a strategic regional hub.
Accession to the Trump corridor modality via Azerbaijan to Turkey, it will allow us to open our opportunities to the South Europe, to Caucasus and to the Gulf. And also this is gate for the South European countries to the Central Asia. So in this regard, the Trump corridor is not just about connection to parts of Azerbaijan, it's also about connection to different parts of the world via Azerbaijan.
Beyond economic issues, discussions also covered regional security, climate challenges, and the need to move from dialogue to practical cooperation mechanisms.
Looking ahead, the format has very strong potential, especially in an era of increasing regionalization in global politics. I believe that in the future, as peace processes advance, countries such as Georgia and Armenia could join, and Turkey's participation may also become possible.
Experts concluded that the expanded C6 format could turn shared interests into concrete projects, fostering a more connected, strategically aligned and economically integrated region.
Azerbaijan will support the construction and renovation of schools destroyed or damaged in Syria, according to Azerbaijan's Ministry of Science and Education. A strategic partnership agreement on restoring Syria's educational infrastructure was signed on Tuesday at ISESCO headquarters in Rabat by Azerbaijan's Minister of Science and Education, Emin Amrullayev, Syria's Education Minister, Mohammed Abdulrahman Turko, and ISESCO Director General, Salim bin Mohammed Al-Malik. Under the deal, Azerbaijan will help restore the sector, including building 10 new schools and renovating around 100 damaged facilities. Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan have launched a pilot cargo corridor with China. The first freight train has departed for Tajikistan, carrying consumer goods and construction equipment. The pilot service is operated by Uzbek-Chinese firm UTK International Logistics. The train, made up of 8 40-foot containers, departed from Lanzhou in northwest China and will travel through Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan to the Dushanbe 2 station in Tajikistan. The 3,500-kilometer route takes around 18 to 20 days and forms part of a wider agreement to deepen regional cooperation. Uzbekistan is moving forward with ambitious plans in space exploration, reviewing the launch of a national scientific satellite by 2028 and the preparation of the country's first astronaut for a short-term space mission.
Uzbekistan has begun active preparations to develop its national space program, including the launch of its first scientific satellite and the training of a domestic cosmonaut. President Shavkat Mirziyoyev reviewed initial proposals for creating a sovereign space infrastructure that would include satellite control systems, data processing capabilities, and practical applications for the economy. Over the past 5 years, demand for satellite remote sensing data in Uzbekistan has tripled. Today, more than 10 government agencies and all regional administrations use space monitoring systems to assess land use, agriculture, and infrastructure development. Authorities plans to launch a 6U format scientific satellite named Mirzo-Ulugh in 2028. Technical requirements for precision and payload have already been defined based on international experience. Simultaneously, Uzbekistan intends to prepare its first national cosmonaut for a short-term space flight, lasting 10 to 14 days. The mission is expected to include a dedicated scientific program focused on medicine and biology, plant genetics, particularly drought and salt-resistant crops, as well as testing new materials and fabrics in space conditions to assess their durability, heat resistance, and performance in extreme environments. It is Sivil Vajap reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
In Agdam, one of the most heavily mined areas of Karabakh, teams are working around the clock to clear landmines and secure the area. Azerbaijan's Emergency Situations Ministry is leading large-scale efforts to remove mines and unexploded ordnance across the region.
Every step, every movement is a danger here. Now we are in Agdam, once a cultural center in the heart of Karabakh, but now it is the symbol of resilience. Special staff are working tirelessly to clear mines left behind by conflict.
In the Agdam region, the Azerbaijan Ministry of Emergency Situations continues large-scale operations to clear landmines and unexploded ordnance. Agdam is considered one of the most heavily mined areas in Karabakh, which is why special units of the ministry's Special Risk Rescue Service are using multiple methods to make these territories safe again.
Mine clearance operations are carried out here in parallel using 3 methods: manual mine clearance using canine teams, and mechanical mine clearance using the GCS 200 brand. The mechanical mine clearance vehicle aims to ensure the safety of personnel.
Operations are conducted with great precision in designated strategic areas, villages and settlements, around drinking water reservoirs, and along irrigation channels. Demining personnel working with dogs and advanced technical equipment undergo specialized professional training to operate safely in these high-risk environments.
The personnel involved in the implementation of the tasks, after participating in international-level training and obtaining appropriate certificates, are released to carry out the tasks in the area. The personnel has been equipped with tools and equipment that meet the latest and most modern technologies.
Since November 2020, over 252,000 hectares of land in liberated areas have been cleared of mines and unexploded remnants of war. Each cleared field is a step closer to rebuilding Agdam and bringing its people safely back home.
Let's cross over to the world of sports for just a bit. A historic playoff match tonight when Karabakh is hosting Newcastle in the UEFA Champions League knockout playoff first leg. Now, the game is kicking off right in these moments. A News' Katie Wilson made her way to the stadium here in Baku, where she spoke to some local fans that were getting ready for the upcoming game. Let's have a look.
It's a historic day here in Baku, as for the first time in history, an Azerbaijani side has made it to the knockout stage playoffs of the UEFA Champions League. Karabakh are taking on Newcastle United, an English Premier League team, winners of the Carabao Cup. And just a reminder of the setup here, there's going to be a home game and an away game. The overall winners will progress to the last 16. The losers will be out. No second chances here in knockouts. Now, this is Karabakh's home game, therefore, if Karabakh want to cause an upset, cause a surprise, as Newcastle are the stronger team on paper, tonight is the night. Newcastle have travelled further than any English side during the tournament so far to get here, so they're going to be tired. Newcastle's captain, Bruno Guimaraes, is currently not in the squad due to an injury, so there's a lot of unknown factors here at play this evening. However, Karabakh's manager, Gurban Gurbanov, is not underestimating the Magpies. He has said that they are the side that no English team want to face, but with Karabakh crowd behind them, a home crowd, let's see what happens tonight. There's a lot of chances for surprises. I've been speaking to both Karabakh and Newcastle fans ahead of what is set to be a very exciting game. So what's your prediction for the game tonight?
I think 2-2. We'll have a draw because that will be a very amazing game.
And how do you feel to be here?
I'm super excited. I'm watching all of the games of Karabakh and I really hope that we will win because we need that.
2-1 Karabakh wins.
2-1 Karabakh wins.
İnşallah Karabakh will win.
I think today we will win the match. Maybe score will be 3-1 or 2-1 for Karabakh. That's my opinion.
I think it's going to be whether 1-0 or 2-0 for Newcastle, unfortunately. I'm sorry. But Karabakh will face a tough opponent. But I think it's going to be a nice match to watch. And it's going to be a fine competition between two giant clubs, between Azerbaijan and England.
Not sure about predictions when
The head says a win to Newcastle, but he is saying a draw, 1-1.
And what do you make of Karabakh as a team?
They're good at home, but not very good away. So if Newcastle keep it close to take it back to Newcastle, that might be enough. But at home, Karabakh would be good.
Yes.
And have you enjoyed your time in Baku?
We have
Yes,
thoroughly
very good,
enjoyed
yes.
it. Yes, lovely.
Very good. Food's good, couple of drinks, nice scenery.
Yeah, I've heard good things about the headland.
After a short break, we'll take a look at Azerbaijan's plans to help rebuild and restore damaged schools in Syria. Do stay with us. Welcome back. More than a decade after conflict reshaped much of Syria's infrastructure, rebuilding basic services remains a central challenge. Azerbaijan has now announced plans to support the construction and renovation of schools damaged during the war, a move that places education at the heart of recovery efforts. But how significant is this step, and how does it fit into Damascus's broader roadmap for reconstruction? Joining us to discuss this is Lamis Jdid, political analyst, speaking to us from Geneva. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. Now, from your perspective, how important is rebuilding schools at this stage of Syria's recovery?
Syria is politically fragmented. It suffered a long war. It suffered after a very tough transition. And I think all what we can speak about is rebuilding. Of course, Syria needs to build, and first of anything else is schools, education, and to go back to where it was before 2011. And Azerbaijan, as as its president made it clear that they want to participate and to be a friend of Syria, something that was not the case before the new government took over control of Damascus. So yes, now not only promises of education, improving the education, rebuilding schools, now we have so many other agreements between regional powers, including Azerbaijan with the Turk, with the Qatari, with the Israeli also, for improving the situation of electricity and gas in Syria. So Azerbaijan wants a bigger role, regional bigger role, and I think they are showing it. They started in Syria. Why not?
What would you say that restoring the education system, this cornerstone for educating new generations of Syrians, mean for communities that have lived through years of civil war and other types of disruption?
So much to the core of the problem in Syria. I think education is the building of any nation. As I mentioned, we suffered fragmented now conflict, interests, and absolutely who paid most was children and young people. And to rebuild anything, we need to think about healthy background and what type of education we will offer these children. Is it really, we need to get out of the extremist mentality, we need to get out of the fears of expressions. I think for freedom of expressions, education is so much linked to the identity of any nation. So I believe this needs to be discussed, this needs to be approved also with the government appointed in Damascus now, the transitional government in Damascus. What their vision for the future of this nation? Are they going to have some kind of secular model of Islam, like something in Turkey or Azerbaijan, or they will let the country drift into more extremism? This is to find the answers in the very near future. But what we see for the time being is not a darker picture, I think, if I might say.
What are the main obstacles that these new authorities in Damascus still face when it comes to this road of recovery? Is it these political issues uniting the country? Is it bombed out infrastructure, the lack of basic services? Is it a combination of both or something else entirely?
I think one of the biggest mistake of this government in Damascus that it wants to keep the power under any price. So they are trying to please everyone, including people that less what we could say about them being qualified of a leadership position. So this applies on many other agreements that took the country maybe to places that should not be taken. But I believe mainly that they need to listen more to the people of Syria, to the Syrian, to the not only the small portion of Syrians here and there, but I'm speaking about majority of Syrians who were known as always to be moderate people, open people. They need to be asked how they see the future of their country. But if we are there as a government and we want to rule by any means, I think mistakes could happen. We need more civil societies to be active. We need more a true parliament, also not only a continuation of the last regime that ruled Syria for decades and which was political dictatorship, and we don't want to continue for religious dictatorship this time.
Lamis, thank you kindly for joining us and providing us with your insight.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. That's all we have for you for now. Stay tuned to A News.